David, where are you gonna be standing most of the time? Okay, yeah, if you can kind of, there we go. Yeah, that's good. I got the podium and the slide in there, so. Very cool. All right, I'll do the intro. I don't have any notes written, but. Hey, I'm Paul. I'm the Greater Greenwood Tech Council is Krista Hansen and I kind of came up with it. We're just trying to connect. She had the Geek Breakfast before this, and we decided we wanted to formalize it into monthly meetings. So we just tried to build a network of people who are either engineering, kind of STEM focused is what we tried to broaden to. So we have a small meeting. And so David, I think we had an event and David got in touch with me and I thought he'd be great to present because he's launched 3 Kickstarters, has a lot of followers on YouTube, right? Decent amount of views.
It's not a lot.
I don't know. It looks like a lot to me. But so he's doing a good job. So he can kind of talk about Kickstarter. And David's had some interest. We've talked about starting either a maker club or looking in the long term about a makerspace. So without further ado, here's David.
Thank you. All right. So as Paul said, I'm David Burrell. I am a Greenwood native. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm married with 3 kids. I've got a dog, 3 chickens. What kind of got me into this realm and then led me down this path is my twisted fascination with automation and CNC machines. And I originally went to college I thought be an engineer and get into robotics. And after my first year, I ended up needing to come to summer school in Atlanta to get a calculus class to carry back to my main school, and I fell into IT and computers and never looked back. So, come full circle now, I'm back tinkering on the side and dabbling a little bit at work with engineering and automation and mechatronics and things like that. So, kind of my main interest, obviously CNC. I really enjoy 3D printing now that the prices have come down like they have. Designing, computer, CAD/CAM design. The favorite quote that I've got here, I found it years ago, and I didn't know until today that it was penned to several authors. And then that last little thing is something that I carry over from work, and that is 1 is greater than 1,000. And that basically means that 1 experiment is greater than 1,000 experiments. And that's kind of like what I do. Whenever you put yourself out on YouTube like I do, there are a million keyboard experts out there, and they will rip you a new one in a heartbeat. And that's fine, they can do that, but I'm the one that's on YouTube doing it, and everyone else is watching it. So I'll be glad to watch their videos anytime. So, no, I got it. What does that mean? So this is kind of where the LoopAlien started. My wife and I were selling some baby furniture when we were getting out of that generation of our life. And a very young couple that was expecting to come to our house to pick the furniture up. And I stood there for what seemed like probably 10 minutes watching this young father-to-be tried to secure that stuff in the back of his truck, and he could not do it. And so I went up to him and I said, "Hey, let me get that, let me tie it up for you." And he wanted nothing to do with it. And so it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, okay, he didn't want any help. He didn't want to swallow his pride or take his ego off or whatever. And I just kind of let him do his thing. And after tying what seemed like 45 granny knots, they puts it off down the road, and hopefully the furniture made it. So that made me realize not everybody knows how to use cord. Not everybody knows how to tie knots. Effectively, I mean, you can put a ton of granny knots and you can probably get the job done, but there's always a more streamlined way to do it. But with that, with my love for design, with my love for tinkering and trying to figure problems out, I designed what turned into multiple iterations of what ultimately became the LoopAlien. It was going to be a cord attachment device. I was trying to come up with a good name for it, and this kind of evolved probably over the course of a year. So the LoopAlien that is what is out there today is the third iteration, roughly, of what I started with. And so, and I've got samples of just about everything that I've ever made, at least one of each, on the table, and some other things that would be interesting to talk about that we can talk about afterwards. But starting at the top, the black item is what the LoopAlien came from. They don't look very similar, but they function almost identical. And after having a discussion with a good friend of mine at lunch, showing him my idea, him being a little bit more of a hammock camper, I'm not a hammock camper. Him being in that space, he's like, people want it to be as small and as tiny and as light as possible. And so that led to the one down on this side. And after showing him that, it's like, we could probably get a smaller. So that turned into the top right there, which is probably the very first LoopAlien that I cut on the CNC machine. And so that ultimately evolved into what is the production LoopAlien, which is the long one on the bottom right. So in order to see if this is going to fly, you got to know if it works. The idea was sound. I made one out of cardboard. Yeah, I thought it would work, but you really kind of have to put the rubber to the road. And so cobbled up a way on my CNC machine to hold material so I could cut multiples of these. It's not the easiest thing to hold on to, especially when you're kind of doing it with whatever you've got and you're using a DIY type of environment. But it worked. And so this is a small video clip, and I'll let it play while I'm talking. It's a little bit abbreviated, but this is my very first CNC machine that I have built, cutting out the very first LoopAlien. And this is out of 1/8" aluminum. That's a piece of aluminum strap bar that I went down to Lowe's and bought. And that fixture is just another piece of aluminum that I cut a channel into. And I'm using these different size screws to hold the material down. While in the first part of it, I'm cutting the interior holes. Then I use a fastener through the largest hole to hold the part down itself so it doesn't move. And then I go around the outside 3 times. And I end up with basically a LoopAlien. It needs a little bit of sanding to get the sharp edges off of it, but that is it. Not a practical way to do a Kickstarter project as far as manufacturing. Certainly not. So real quickly, the name. People ask me, how's your alien loop doing? How's your loop Martian doing? They give me all these different names. And it being the LoopAlien, I've had people say, well, where did that name come from? So I asked my jury of peers in my house, which are my kids and my wife, I said, well, what does this look like to you? And the kids were like, well, it kind of looks like an alien. And they were like, this is kind of a mouth, kind of a big eye over here and a little eye over there. I'm like, okay, I see that. And I showed it to my wife. I'm like, what stands out about this? She's like, well, it's got a lot of loops on it, so that's got to be in the name somewhere. So it's as simple as that. LoopAlien was born. Why does that work so well as a brand? The brand caught on more than I ever thought it would. Obviously, that's a good thing, but I can't say that I planned it that way. You hope, and then you just execute. And so, with Kickstarter, you kind of wanted it to have some brand recognition. You kind of wanted to have some pop to it. And so I used an online company to kind of bid out doing a logo design. And this is what I ultimately decided on. I probably picked through 5 or 6 different logo ideas. And I like this one because it tied in what was the first generation of the LoopAlien and then ultimately the second generation, commonly referred to as the UFA for ultra fast attachment. And then it's kind of got that old space age look to it. But the thing that sealed the deal was the fact that LoopAlien.com was available. And I've always found that to be very important for me. My YouTube stuff is neo7cnc.com. Way back in the day after watching The Matrix, I still have neo7.com. And so short, concise names are always a good thing. So when that wasn't taken, and I could get it in loopalien.net, .us, .org, .whatever, it just made sense. And kind of sealed the deal with the brand. So this is back in 2013, so why Kickstarter and why now? So Kickstarter started in 2009, and I probably didn't hear about it until about 2012 when the Pebble watch came out. And I don't have one, I didn't buy one, but that project was huge and it generated a lot of buzz for Kickstarter. And so that kind of put them on the map. And this is a very important one right here, in that when you've got crowdsourcing and crowdfunding going on, once you get to the $10.2 million investment mark, you get a lot of eyes on you. And so that was kind of a aha moment, I think, for the world probably in general, where anybody that is concerned about product development, new tech, new gadgets, whatnot. Back up a little bit. So crowdfunding, that was the new thing. Everybody in here heard of Kickstarter. Obviously, you got the message. Has anybody bought anything off of Kickstarter? Anybody? Let's support this stuff. Okay. And I supported a lot of stuff before I ever launched a project. And that's kind of how I found it, because I saw some gear review, or actually, it was a keychain that I had that I was carrying every day. And I ended up being friends with that guy in Iowa. And I've used him for a good resource for my projects too, because he had a lot of experience. So it's kind of interesting how it came about. So having the LoopAlien idea, or what turned into the LoopAlien idea, this kind of festered on my mind. I'm like, could it be successful? And it was one of these things like, well, you don't have anything to lose as long as you do your homework and you do your due diligence, and you know that if it makes funding, you're covered as best as you can possibly plan ahead. Why not do it? And so I was a glutton for punishment. I said, well, let's do this. So asked around at work, people in the industry I was looking for. I even checked around town. I was looking for somebody to cut these out. And I was thinking that a laser would be a good solution. I couldn't find anybody locally that wanted to do it because of it being aluminum. I was going to be doing aluminum and stainless steel and ultimately titanium. So I asked around at work. I had a guy at work that says, I know a guy that knows a guy. And so I called that guy and got the information for an outfit in Georgia. And there was a water jet service. And I'll explain more about water jet in a second. But it made perfect sense to cut these out, not having access to any better technology at the time. And so I got a quote and asked some other Kickstarter people that I made friends with. Planned for it to go south and make sure I was covered, because I didn't want to get caught with that. It was paramount that this be success. If it gets funding, that I deliver on what I said I was going to deliver on. So I did my homework mostly. I found an example project. So what you see right there is an item called a fish bomb. And it was marketed for outdoor use. Some guys out of, I think around California or Nevada, a brother team. And you could very quickly use it with paracord, and you don't have to tie a knot. And that caught my eye, but unfortunately it caught my eye right when I was going to launch my project. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of in the same space. I don't want to saturate that. I don't want to cannibalize their project, and I don't want to jeopardize my project at the same time. So I let that one go and gave it 2 weeks. That one ended up bringing in almost $90,000. And they offered those in aluminum, stainless steel, and titanium as well. And so I used that project kind of as a comparison for mine. So am I showing enough detail? Am I showing enough use cases? What materials do I need to carry? All that kind of stuff. And so after the 2 weeks after that project had ended, I did. So I said a little prayer, and I watched it. So I can't remember the tracking, how fast it made funding. I think I was looking for $13,500, something like that. It ended up just shy of $35,000. And that was perfectly fine because I built in scale into the price. I built it into the model, and so it was not a big deal until I actually had to finish a market. So with Kickstarter, and this has changed because the third Kickstarter that I've done just funded in May, and it's a different environment. Kickstarter itself is a different environment. It's way different now than it was in 2013 or 14. It has a different feel to it, and maybe this is just me. It doesn't seem as easy to navigate. It doesn't seem as a positive place, not necessarily, but I'm getting off track. So on the money side of things, so Kickstarter, to cut to the chase, whatever you get minus 10%, because they're going to take. They say that Kickstarter will take 5%. Amazon will take between 3 and 5%. Just plan on 10%. So they won't go any higher than that, and so that comes right off the top. So as soon as you make funding, they do a 2-week kind of lag, and for me, it was actually 15 days before I even got a notification saying that funds were set to be transferred. And then it took about 3 days actually that was over the week. It probably took about 4 days for the funds to come through. And that's just direct deposited into a checking account. So on the protection side, I set up an LLC to kind of be the space that the LoopAlien and any other development that I do operates in, and attached banking to that just to kind of complete that wheel. So the number one cost that I had was manufacturing, and I did not shop around. Once I found somebody that could do it, I had already spent so much time finding so many places that couldn't do it. So when I found the first one, it was not the wisest move in hindsight, but I went with that company. And they had decent lead times. We had plenty of delays, but the biggest was when my father and I drove down to Georgia to pick what ultimately turned into 7,500 LoopAliens and various materials, all in sheets. They weren't. That's only a square foot right there. Everything that I picked up was in a 2 foot by 4 foot sheet, except for the titanium. And when we went to pick them up, he had probably 8 sheets of 2 by 4 aluminum stacked up against a rack. And I started looking through them, and I could just tell by looking at them that they were not to specification. And I had been told that they could hold a tolerance of 0.005 of an inch, which is just barely bigger than a piece of paper in thickness. And so I was looking at it. I went and grabbed a pair of digital calipers from them, and I started measuring stuff, and it was measuring 20 and 30 thou over or under, which doesn't sound like much, especially for a this part doesn't interface with anything else. So just look at it with the rate. But when you come up and look at the items on the table, the very smallest loop, if you minus 30 thou off of that, it almost disappears on both sides of the cut. So the inside hole and the outside. If you're 30 thou off, you almost erase the entire piece. So on his dime, he ended up having to expedite another, I don't know how many 4x8 sheets of aluminum he had to buy at his dime and expedite cut 3,500 pieces over again. And that was a comedy of failures on their part. And when I got there to look at the place and pick these things up, I should have gone to Visible first, because it would have been obvious. They mainly cut granite countertops for hotels, for large installations, architectural signage, stuff that's not tolerance critical. Where I had something that was tiny that wasn't tolerance critical. So that added some delay. It didn't add any money per se, but it definitely got me on the frustration side of things. And I never used that company again. So, like I mentioned before, missing the promised delivery date was not something that I wanted to let happen. In 2015, the statistics were roughly 36% of Kickstarter projects get funded. Of those 36%, 9% of them don't deliver at all. I am ashamed to say that of the 50-ish projects that I had backed, 4 of them were at that 9%. And it could be $40 to $180,000. It burns me up when I go to look at those Kickstarter projects, but
Do you get the money back or no?
you do not.
Yeah.
That brings up a good point. Kickstarter's mantra, their rules are that the creator of the project is either supposed to deliver on what they said they were going to give you or give you their money back. There is no mechanism to make you do that.
It's just like promise.
It's just a problem. It's not worth the electrons that is written in on the internet. So if you get overwhelmed with manufacturing stuff, I'm sorry. I'll warn you ahead of time when I see Chuck. So this was the coolest thing that I had ever seen at the time in the industrial automation space. This is a flowjet 5 by 10 foot water jet machine, one of 3 that was in this establishment. And when I got there, they happened to be cutting the titanium pieces. They weren't done with all of them yet, and they promised to ship them as soon as they were done. But they had a sheet of titanium on there, and they were cutting it with a water jet. Now, a water jet is just a glorified super soaker, but it's running at 60 to, it can run into 30,000 too, but typically 60 to 90,000 PSI. And the water is moving so fast, it's almost breaking the sound barrier. It's at 600 miles an hour. And in some instances, there's roughly 30 horsepower at the tip of that water. And the curve, the width of that cut can be 15,000 or all the way down to 7,000 or something like that. So really pinpoint, almost like taking a syringe and squeezing the water out of the needle. This is also a little clip. But what's interesting, I'm asking this question, what is interesting about this cut?
Sparks.
Shoots sparks with the water. So inside, they put an aggregate. It's almost like a dust, a powder, and it's typically garnet, some sort of garnet that is injected in with the water to give it that abrasiveness so it can cut the material away. So that aggregate is sparking that titanium even though it's nearly submerged in water. So that, as you can tell, that is a dirty process. That thing shoots water everywhere. You've got that grit, that aggregate that builds up into the machines that have to be changed out often. And it's not a cheap process to have done at home. And the water jet, just in general, is kind of a high maintenance machine. It can be. There are consumables on it that you have to constantly replace. So this is, I believe that is the entire lot of the aluminum and the entire lot of the stainless steel that I had. And on the other end, on the right side of there, those are just close-ups of how the material, or how the LoopAliens are in the sheet. So the thing to understand here, or to make note of, is this little piece right here. Without this, the water jet would knock the part out of the material, and it would just fall in the tank and you never see it again. So they have to tab the material. And this is roughly 40 thousandths of an inch. I don't know if we can compare that to at the moment. But in titanium, that in a 40 thousandth width, that's like a really good spring. That doesn't want to come out easily. In stainless steel, it was even worse. It would bend and it would break. The aluminum ones were easy. You hit it and it would just break, because that was an alloy 6061 T6, which is a standard aluminum grade that's very common. It has a brittleness to it, so you can't bend it and it'll snap out. So I'll come back to that holding tab that I mentioned. So this is a sheet of titanium, and I was using grade 5 titanium, which is, I love the material to work with it. It's just, there's just something about it. And if you pick up any of the titanium ones, you'll tell it's just different. It has a different sound to it, it has a different heft to it. And it's darn near indestructible, and you can do so many things with it. Not a cheap material, but it is fun to work with. So combined, I had just over 2,000 of the stainless steel and titanium LoopAliens. And with this product being used for cord, if I didn't do that, and I've got some that were laser cut and they're not finished yet, so you can tell how sharp they are. It's very similar to water jet. Water jet is actually a little bit worse. And the water jet leaves a slight taper to the edge of the part. So it's not a straight line. Laser is more of a straight line. The water jet leaves a taper, which causes some manufacturing issues because on the short angle side on the top, that's easy to get a good radius. On the bottom side, you've got a steeper angle, and you have to work harder to get that edge softened so that you can't cut the rope with the thing that you're selling to use with the rope. So I ended up doing a lot of this, which was very tedious and boring, but it had to be done. That's a carbide burr that's very hard, and I'm using it to chamfer all 12,000 individual hole surfaces in order to kind of jump the gun and allow the tumbling process that these would go to have a little bit easier time, a quicker production time.
Did you have to do that on both sides?
I did.
Nice.
Yeah. So each LoopAlien had to be shot like that 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So back to that tab. So when you pop the part out of the sheet, that tab is on top, and the aluminum ones you can just sand them right off. It takes no time at all. The stainless steel ones, not so much. The titanium ones, forget about it. You can't just knock that tab off and hit it with the sander. You really got to remove the material. So with the 2,000 or so of these that I had, this is the evolution of how I got rid of the tabs. And those 4 needle nose pliers were destroyed by the time this project was over because I did that 2,000 times. You could about drive a truck through the cutters on that pair. But it worked.
Is that what you cut in there? Is that aluminum or titanium?
That was titanium. So I'm cutting a little tab off of the top just by whacking it with those pliers and that out. So that, even though that cuts off the main body of the tab, it does not complete that curvature of the top like it should be. And so this is titanium, which again I love, and it sparks white, which is a lot of fun. And when people are walking by your garage in your neighborhood, they see white sparks shoot out, and you get people's attention, especially when it's dark outside. So the only part of the manufacture that I outsourced, as you've kind of seen already, was just the physical cut of the stock. Everything past that was on me. I didn't have any titanium samples. I didn't have any stainless steel samples, so I did not know from a finishing standpoint how that was exactly going to work. And so this is one of those areas where I got in and I felt like I was in a little bit over my head because I was setting myself up for a time crunch that I did not want to have. So one of the ways that you can kind of soften those edges of the part, like I mentioned a minute ago, is to do vibratory tumbling. If anybody's into gun reloading, you've seen very small versions of this. It's a vibratory bolt tumbler, and as you'll see in the video, as it's on, it's just constantly turning over this material. The material that's in there is a very aggressive grade of ceramic tumbling media. It almost looks like cat food. It's kind of triangular. And for what I was looking for the softness of the edges on the parts that I was making, I had to run these for 48 hours, had to change the water about 4 times to get 225 of them to about where I wanted it to be as far as the finish and the feel and the hand and the surface finish as well. This was a big learning process, learning how often to change the water. If you don't change the water, you just let it run. The parts actually will almost destroy themselves. They'll get dirty. You can't do anything with them. You can't get them back to the luster that you're looking for if you don't keep them clean. Flat parts, even though there's not much area to that part, they're so light. Flat parts love to stick. Multiple times a day, I'd go home at lunch and check it, and there would be 4 or 5 of them just riding together. It would come apart because the liquid in there would kind of get between them, and it would glue them together. I mean, they would float on each other, but it would stick. So you would constantly have to kind of babysit it. Stainless steel, I think I probably ran it for 5 days. They act differently because they're heavier, and so they don't necessarily travel as much in the machine. Titanium was a disaster. I had so many aluminum ones to get done that I was able to get the stainless steel done, but after doing a test batch of the titanium, it was not going to happen in the time frame that I had. So out of fear of failure, I found a finishing company up north that had several different methods for finishing tough materials. They would laugh at something like this. I mean, I didn't give you the scale of this. This thing sitting in a box that's 4 foot by 4 foot. That thing is 6 gallons is how much it holds inside that donut shape. And the media in there alone weighs 50 pounds. So when I'm trying to clean the LoopAliens out and you're trying to dig down in the bottom and see if there's one that's just kind of hiding out. When that thing's working and you've got 50 pounds of material bouncing on your hand, there's a lot of force in there. And even with that force, when I threw titanium in there, it was just like, that might as well have been styrofoam beads. It would not do it in the time frame that I had. Because I knew I could only do about 225 at a time. Between stainless steel and titanium, I had 2,000 pieces. It was going to take weeks. But worse, when I figured out how long it would actually take to get them to the softness that they needed to be, I was running between 8 and 10 days, 24 hours a day for one batch. It wasn't going to happen. So the company that I found, they have some extremely aggressive ways to take the edges off of parts. And I was scared to do it because I was sending my entire titanium inventory that I could not get quickly again. It was already prepped for finishing and everything. I had to ship the entire lot, which fit in a box smaller than that, and insure it for the sale value, which was thousands of dollars. Overnight it, let them have it for 3 days, pay insurance on it again, and the overnight shipping to get it back so I could fulfill the Kickstarters, but it had to be done. But lesson learned. After the Kickstarter project, I ended up adopting that workload myself because I just settled into, okay, if I do a small batch, but I would just sell them online, a small batch would last me a month or two. So 9 or 10 days in the tunnel didn't matter at that point. So this was a very common sight during the project. A lot of LoopAliens around the house in towels, on t-shirts, laying in the garage with a fan blowing on to dry them off. Once they come out of the tunnel, you kind of have to wash them. Get them clean. With my project, I included this cord. And this was something that was new to me. This is Dyneema. Anybody that camps or is an outdoors person, you probably heard of that before. This is 1.75 millimeter Dyneema synthetic cord. It's very flexible, works great with the LoopAliens, and can hold 400 pounds at 1.75 millimeters. And so I included that with the project, even though that's, in hindsight, that's a premium cord. The LoopAlien will work with paracord. It's just not adjustable like it was designed for with this cord. Or something in a similar size. Something that's braided works better. Paracord, since it's a dual makeup, you've got an outside jacket, inside spiral cord. When you run it through the LoopAlien, it does not want to traverse around the LoopAlien. It just kind of locks off. So with the cord, and I'll share some facts at the end of the presentation that I really hadn't paid attention to until today. I thought they were kind of neat. We went through a lot of cord. And so each package had either 20, 40, or 80 feet of either yellow or gray Dyneema. And I needed a quick way to do that. I didn't want to necessarily use one of those cord counters like you see at Lowe's where you kind of line it up on spool. It packs very well, it's very light, so it's great on shipping. And so my 8-year-old son at the time is just demonstrating a very low budget way that we came out with very quickly, get any multiple of 10 feet. And so this was an early version, just a 2x4, 10 foot long, or 12 foot long. We cut it down, and it's just got 2 nails on it, and we just run it between. And that worked slowly up to 80 feet. Once it starts winding on itself, it doesn't want to move. Ultimately, that turned into 2 big pulleys that were on there, and I took a length of cord and measured out 10 feet, tied a knot into it to make sure that was right, and I just spaced the pulleys based on that length of cord, and I could easily wind up probably up to 150 feet before it would come off the board. And I used that until the end of the LoopAlien for So like I said, we had lots and lots of cord, lots of gray cord, lots of yellow cord. The gray was the most popular. U-line, I became very popular with U-line for a little bit there, with all the shipping pieces that I was buying, all the bags that I was buying. Every LoopAlien was individually bagged, regardless of material. The cord was bundled and wrapped up with a rubber band. And then there's in that middle picture, you see that postage thing right there. That's just a bunch of inserts that were included in the package. So when we would pack these up, we would basically print out the backer. When you do a Kickstarter project, when the project is successful, depending on your reward tiers, you'll be able to go and run a backer report, which is an Excel CSV file that you can download, and it gives you the name, address, what they ordered, and all this kind of stuff. And so each tier was the same reward. So we printed our package labels and everything by reward tier, so we didn't get the materials and the parts mixed up between rewards. So we would pre-bag the reward and write on the outside of the envelope what it was. So when it came to actually mail that batch, we would just get the corresponding reward packages that we'd already pre-packaged, and we would put the right labels on them. This was the first batch that went to the post office, the very first day. So that's 7 boxes, 7 postage containers. And we did that every day for about 4 or 5 days. And they filled up our own hopper at the post office that day. So here's some of the facts. So the project had 966 backers. Like I mentioned before, 7,500 LoopAliens were created for the project. We went through 13,470 feet of cord, which is just over 2.5 miles. We shipped packages to all 50 states, 32 countries, and 5 continents. We only had 1 package returned as undeliverable, and it was never claimed. The LoopAlien as a brand was acquired by another outdoor company early last year. And the Kickstarter that was just successfully funded is actually a variation of the very first concept for the LoopAlien. So, back down to that. There's so much more to talk about, and so if anybody has any questions, I'd love to do it.
What do you think was your success in marketing? Why did you catch people's attention?
Repeat that last part.
Why did you catch people's attention?
I think it was a sign of the times on Kickstarter. I think that's part of it. I may have missed the sweet spot, but there was still enough there to get the project where it landed. There was a huge demand for titanium. And I very quickly realized that there's a lot of 20 to 35-year-olds that have disposable income that wanted the next best thing that nobody else had. And so Kickstarter guaranteed that, because if you get it on Kickstarter, it's something that's not out there. And I see people do that to this day. I've seen people that got started on Kickstarter before I did. One guy in particular, the guy I mentioned in Iowa, his very first project was a keychain. And it was called the WTF, which is kind of tongue-in-cheek. But he said it was the WTF because it was the wrench that fits. And so this is also 1/8-inch titanium. And these little steps that you see, one side is metric, one side is standard. So you can slide this over the top of the fastener and turn it around. It also has a kind of fingernail file / screwdriver box opener on the other side. And it's just got that I need it factor.
Yeah.
And so I watched him, and I got a lot of inspiration from him. And over 2 years, I got curious one day. Over 2 years, I went and added up what he had pulled in on Kickstarter gross, and he was over $300,000 over 8 different projects. And he used to be a wind farm technician in, I think, Iowa. He got laid off from his job. He used some of his 401k money before he was laid off to buy a prosumer CNC machine for the house. And today, he has more than 30,000 Instagram followers. He still does not have a regular job. and he gets up and goes and works in his garage every morning with a robo drill, a rubber speedo, and a Swiss pipe lathe. And anything that he decides he wants to make, he makes. And by way of Instagram, anything that he makes, he sells. And that's how he supports his family. And I've seen that happen multiple times. So that is inspiring. I'm not in my stage of life, I can't do that. And that's fine. But I enjoy seeing the people that can get out there and do that. So he got fed up with Kickstarter. He didn't want to deal with fees. He didn't want to deal with the hassle. And so he dropped Kickstarter after those couple of years, after he made all that money gross-wise, and he just does his own. He has enough following that he can support his.
So what does he have, like an online store? I mean, like
He does.
does he still have stuff kickstarted kind of? Like does he still have like funding campaigns, or does he just kind of put it online and sell it?
I don't know if he does pre-sales or if he can just produce small batches
And then
it just kind of
adjust with whatever the market demand is.
And he's done little titanium pieces with a magnet stuck in them, so you can use it for pen stuff or for hooking keychains together, titanium pins, all sorts of different things, box cutter holders that are real custom made. And I've watched another guy. He didn't get his start on Kickstarter, but he started in a garage using a small Harbor Freight type manual milling machine that he converted to CNC. And now he's in a shop with 6 employees, and he's got $500,000 in equipment. Just bought another $75,000 machine, and he sells knives that go at the minimum for $500. And he sells out of there.
This guy in Charleston does it too.
This guy's John out of Canada.
They're just like high-end knives.
But this guy's pursuit of perfection is on most days annoying to me. I appreciate it, and that's his niche. That is absolutely his niche, and people will pay him for that. But when he makes it, it's right.
What's the biggest difference between something like Kickstarter and GoFundMe?
GoFundMe, I think that has a lot more personal projects that may not have a reward or something like that too. It might be somebody's.
Indiegogo is more something like that.
Indiegogo is more like Kickstarter, but it seems like they're a little bit loose with the rules, a little bit more than Kickstarter is.
Is Kickstarter still 10%? One of them's like 50%, isn't it? Is it Indiegogo that's higher?
I don't know. I've never gotten far enough down the Indiegogo rabbit hole to get that information. Kickstarter is absolutely 10%. That's what I experienced.
But if you don't hit your goal, it doesn't fund, right?
If you don't hit your goal, everybody walks away.
What did you sell these things for?
The LoopAlien, the aluminum ones, after the Kickstarter project, they sold for $3.99 a piece, and titanium was $7.99 a piece.
What was your cost per piece?
I don't know how far I can give that information out since I don't own that product anymore.
So the way it works is they donate money to you. They expect to get one of these things once you start making.
Whatever reward tier that they support you at, there's some sort of product associated with that. As far as my projects go, I was delivering a product, whereas some people it might be a CD, it might be
Right, and you set like a funding goal. So if you don't meet that funding goal, like 30.
$50, what do they get? $50 worth of these things? Or?
It depends on how you set up the reward tier. So let's see. I don't really remember, but I know I had a package that was like $21, and let's say that was 4 aluminum loop aliens, which is most likely what it was. So they give $21 plus shipping, and if the project is successful and it works out, then I produce that and send it to them. So it's almost like a pre-order. But if it doesn't make funding, everybody walks away and the bike's spends money.
Was it a no-brainer to sell it out to that other company that you could?
Well, honestly, I like the creation process. I like figuring out how to make them the best they can be. And then once I figured that out, my interest started kind of waning. And so for 3 years, even after the Kickstarter project, I had inventory left over because I overshot on purpose in case stuff was lost in shipping, there were mix-ups, whatever the case may be. So I had product left over, and and that led me to create an online store so I could unload the product because there was still demand for it. because as soon as people got out and started using them, I had people saying, hey, how do I get that? So I ended up somewhat reluctantly starting a business, online business, where I could sell the LoopAlien. Since I still had demand and I knew it could be better, I doubled down and found another manufacturer here in the U.S. that could make it at 1/3 my cost. And when I received it, it was finished instead of me having to do anything to it. And so I doubled down and spent a significant sum of money to buy a 5,500 quantity order of aluminum product. And I just kind of whittled through that over the next 3 years. And ultimately, some of that went with the company that bought the brand. I was elated to have a company that was interested in it. I didn't want to see it die. It's kind of like a baby. You want to see it kind of grow and expand. And it took them 16 months to announce that they had acquired the brand, even though they were selling it on their website. They never really publicized it until about 2 weeks ago, which was crazy, but it's their.
Was your online store on eBay or Etsy or someplace like that?
While I had the LoopAlien, I had my own personal store that just used a WordPress website theme with some PayPal integration, like WooCommerce or something like that. And it was pretty easy to use. You have to maintain it, you have to keep it up to date, you have to fight with the software updates and making sure this thing talks to this thing. And that can be complicated. There are better ways to do it now, whether it's Wix or Squarespace or somebody that's got shopping cart stuff integrated. But I sold them online. Later on, towards the end of my ownership of it, I dabbled with selling them on Amazon. And this is a good segue. And I also dabbled with selling them on eBay. And the reason is I needed to compete with the Chinese knockoff that was now on the market. And after 18 months, I wasn't the only one that had a LoopAlien. And they didn't call them LoopAliens, they called them 3-hole core attachment device or Axiom or had one laser etch with a CAD on it. It was all kinds of crazy stuff. And that was very disheartening and backhand flattered at the same time. But alas, that's not my problem now.
Did you patent it or anything like that? Or
I attempted to. And that is also a good story. So it's an expensive story with not a happy outcome, but it is a good story. So at least I got something out of it. So I pursued getting a utility patent on the LoopAlien concept, on how it attaches to the cord and how it moves. And I also trademarked the LoopAlien name just to protect it as due diligence. Never really had an intention on selling it. So after I pursued the patent and filled out everything, it sat for 11 months before they even looked at it. And so they looked at it, and after 2 weeks, they quickly shot it back saying, we don't like how you're doing this. You're trying to patent two things under the same patent that aren't the same. I was like, I don't know where you're coming from. So the other design, you see the similarities here. They look identical except for the bottom. So this is the UFA, which just makes it quicker to use. Everything else is the same. And I tried to patent both of those under the same patent. And they came back and they said, you need to pick one to be your core product. And so I went with the original design, which in hindsight may have been not the right call. And I gave the company that was helping me another $500 to submit that back to the patent office. And then about a month, 6 weeks go by, and they bounced it back again, and they were claiming prior art from something from 1875. And it was a flat piece of metal with 4 different size holes in it, and that was it. It didn't look like this. It wasn't used for this. It was something used on sailing vessels back in the 1800s. But they said, no, you can't do that. Something like that already exists. And I'm like, y'all are crazy. It's not even the same. It's not even used like that. This is a utility patent. And so to answer that back was going to cost $1,200.
yeah.
And I'm like, I walked away. So I was already in it for $4,500. I wasn't going to do it. And I know, and in hindsight, that is silly. Two big pieces of advice. One from a friend that is a creator and has patented items and sold them. The other from a very well-respected patent attorney in Atlanta. And the first bit of advice from the other maker is if you're not going to defend it, don't patent it. And so I'm not Daddy Warbucks. I don't have tons of money.
Right.
And so I very quickly said I'm not going to pursue that, because if somebody infringes on my patent, I'm not going to extend the resources to fight. And so the second piece of advice that I got from the attorney in Atlanta, a friend of a friend, he said, I've had people come in my office and say, little Johnny drew this thing up, or he made this thing out of Legos, and I want to patent it for him. I think it'd be a neat gift for my kid. He can hang it on the wall, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And the guy's first response was, if you don't have $25,000 and you're not going to quit your real job tomorrow, don't do it. If you're not willing to put everything on the line to fight for that patent, don't do it. And he said, I've got customers that have been in litigation for 10 years with the patent. He said, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're still paying. I'm like, okay, we're going to settle that. Let me speak out of the other side of my mouth. So with the latest one, which I call the Quicket, it was originally going to be the Sideliner. And this is the variation of where the LoopAlien came from. I kind of worked out a deal with the guys that took over the LoopAlien brand, and I offered this to them as a design. They could just buy it outright if they were interested in it. I had another design too. And so I fished both of those to them. They weren't interested in the Sideliner at all. I said, okay, they were interested in the other one. I'm like, well, that's fine. And so I floated the idea. I said, can I do it on Kickstarter? And if it's successful, y'all get first dibs to buy it. If you want to add this to your hardware repertoire for your company. And they said, well, we don't, and this was the right thing to say, you're going to go back into business? We don't, that's kind of a conflict of interest. And I said, I completely agree with you. I said, however, I will tell you, I'm not starting another online business. I don't want to do that. I want to create, I want to mature, and I want to move on to the next. That's kind of where my sweet spot is. So they gave me written consent to do it. And so I launched that project actually twice. The first time it did not make funding, and I was looking for $12,500 or something like that. And I ended up with like $7,900. And there were two big reasons. One, I was trying to include paracord with this, and paracord is heavy, and it obviously adds cost to the product. It added cost to the shipping material, but the huge hit was it added a ton of cost to the shipping cost in general. International is horrible. International shipping went from $14 to $22 for whatever package you bought. Even if you just bought two, it was going to be $24 or $22 of shipping. So when I relaunched the project, I cut the paracord out completely, massaged the numbers to kind of streamline a little bit, made the numbers push people towards the higher end of quantity, because I was just looking for the quantity because that would give the buy time. And I think that's part of the success of it, was kind of streamlining the numbers and tweaking it from low to high and driving people to, and actually over 50% of the people that project bought the 8 patent, which was the highest patent.
When you decide to launch a Kickstarter, how actively do you promote it? Or do you kind of, like, does the community seem to take it on because you're already in that niche?
Kickstarter will promote it to a point. They really look for something that's going to get that wow factor quick, and it has a really good trajectory, because they'll start seeing the tracking statistics for bidders per day or backers per day, what attrition rate you have, different things like that. With the LoopAlien, it was so new, I didn't really know where to go with it. I had, and actually this is a good segue. If you launch a Kickstarter project, prepare to be inundated with all sorts of stuff. You'll have other Kickstarter projects that will be like, hey, you want to do some cross promotion? And like, I got some of those with this last project, and I'm like, your item isn't even remotely related to what I'm doing. And so is press bad? I don't think it probably is, but at the time, I didn't want to extend the effort because their audience was not my audience. So there was no good cross promotion. And they'll probably get more help than I would. So I didn't really go down that path. But you'll find a lot of companies that want to help you market it. They want to send it out. They want to do a mail blast for you. They want to get you in front of stores or whatever. And you have to tread lightly because a lot of that is just scamming. A lot of that's going to be like, as soon as they get your idea, they're going to run with it. Especially if you don't have any IP protected, you don't have a patent or anything like that, it's fair game. The way the patent is now, it's first to file, so the battery cannot do it quick. So whoever's got the most money, they can get the patent on his hands the quickest. But I did use an outside marketing company that gave me an email list that had like 20,000 different email contacts on it for news companies. I think I sent it to WIFF. I was just kind of trying to throw it against the wall and see where it would stick. I don't know how much of that actually worked. I did use my YouTube channel to help promote it because I had a decent following at the time, and anywhere I could get out was good. And a lot of people, when I do educational videos or how-to videos, I don't really ask for stuff. And so I have used the opportunity 3 times now that, like, if you ever wanted to support me as a person or what I do in my workshop, and you actually get something tangible other than information back, this is a good way to support it. And I think that resonated with a lot of people just to kind of help outside of it.
Cool.
Yeah, and obviously social media on Facebook, family, Instagram, Twitter, just whatever. So the social media influence does have a lot, and then now it's so easy to actually pay for a post to be on Facebook and get blasted out to 60,000 people. It's fairly expensive to do it too. And that got a little bit of traffic, but not near much. The bulk of the traffic came from Kickstarter. I think it was Kickstarter and Discovery.
Cool. All right, well, thanks.
Did you keep your day job?
Oh yeah, still got it. The second project was not as easy going, and it was a bigger learning curve because of the material.
All right, so what's titanium?
So the big honking one, that guy's the. So this is aluminum, this is titanium, and the reason I'm showing this is because of the yield per sheet. Both of these are 1 square foot. This one only produced 88 pieces. This produces 110. And the difference is the Lackey water jet gun that I used the first time and this Pro that I used in Texas the second time.
Yeah.
Cheaper to cut. Can hold a top. Yeah, it can hold a tolerance of roughly 5,000 without that try. This guy is all over the place. And this is kind of the evolution of